Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sophia Didis. I'm the creator of Shahir Shaka. I'm back again this week. This week's topic is non-married women over 30, and to not make it too general, I included different perspectives, which is being non-married and being in your 30s, being in your 30s getting married, and being in your 30s and just recently married. So, you guys can introduce yourselves.
My name is Warda.
My name is Umi.
And my name is Shikri.
My name is Khadra.
So, when I first thought about putting this panel together, I told a lot of people the topic I was trying to do, and a lot of people were like, "What, Sophia, you're crazy for trying to do this topic. Why are you trying to put people on blast?" And then I didn't think it was a big deal doing this topic because for me it's more informational and not about like shaming women who aren't married. So like seeing the resistance from people and like when I would ask people, "Oh, do you want to be part of the panel?" A lot of people were nervous. That even gave me a bigger reason to do the video, you know. So I brought you guys together today to just like tell you guys' like personal experiences, advice for people who are in their early 20s, late 20s, and yeah. So the first question is,
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
So what you just said, which is really important that you mentioned, because when you asked me, I also was hesitant. I was like, no. But then when, like everyone else here, when I saw the questions too, I was like, maybe it's important for the community to hear from people in their 30s who aren't married yet or got married in their 30s and understand where they're coming from. Without feeling shameful and feeling a certain way about it. So the reason I agreed was just because of that. It's because so many people are very hesitant and want to keep their stuff personal, but yet who's going to speak on our behalf if we don't speak for ourselves? So I'm glad you mentioned that so that other girls can hear that and be like, hey, I have nothing to be ashamed of. So this is very important. I'm glad you brought it to the table, and hopefully we can get out of our shells.
This long, honestly, because when you texted me a few days ago, I think about a year and a half ago, when we were doing the tribal conversation, the Shah and Sheka that we had, I remember a little bit of it came out, and I remember asking maybe we need to do one for the 30s, and I'm so excited that you did it, because I think with the whole movement of the whole Civil War and the world changing, the world is not the way it used to be, When a girl graduates from high school, middle school, that was the first thing she thought about was marriage. But when we graduate from high school in America, the first thing we think about is college, and just traveling and doing things like that. So, I'm glad you brought this topic out.
So the first question is, why are so many people putting off marriage nowadays?
For me, I was putting it off because I was like, if I finish high school and then I got accepted at UW and I was like, oh, I need to go to college. I was like, oh, I can't raise a baby and try to get a bachelor's degree or do something. So I was like, I can wait. Let me graduate, at least have one degree under my belt, then I can feel more comfortable. And then it became unintentional. Then I was like, oh, I can get my master's and do this, So it just became this really big thing. Then I was like, oh, now I've graduated. Now what can I do? Babies? No, that sounds boring. So it wasn't intentional. First it was intentional, and then it wasn't unintentional. And then it was just this big thing. But I was like, oh, I like my freedom now.
Yeah.
Do I want another person to tell me what to do? So it took long, but it was good. It was a good decision for me.
Absolutely. For me, it was, even when I graduated from high school, I was, whatever, I would say relationship or conversation or courting or dating that I was in, the background intention was always marriage. I didn't think other than a child, other than children, marriage to me, I honestly think marriage would have made college easier for me. That's my perspective. But looking back for the sisters who were married and they were in college, I did see them struggle, not just because they constantly felt guilty being away studying in the library for late hours when their husband is at home alone and things like that. But for me, the perspective I looked at it was it would be nice to have a companionship, someone to share, because you know your parents, they love you, your siblings, they love you, but your spouse is different. It's like they are there to take care of you, you're there to take care of them. There were girls that I went to school with that were married. Some of them had children. I honestly feel their grades were better than mine because they were a little bit more focused, you know. But I never put that away as an intention to say, hey, I don't want it because it's going to hinder me from that. But for me, it just worked out the way it did. I went through college without being married, but I did consider 2 serious relationships while I was in college, and it didn't work out. And alhamdulillah, it did not work out, looking back. So, yeah.
So I personally never really put off marriage. Like it was never my intention to not get married. I thought after high school I was going to. I had like different like timelines where like, oh, by this time I want to be married. By this time I want to be married.
Yeah.
So I've always like had this intention to be married young and early and all of that stuff. But like that's what I said. It just didn't work out, right? So then you reach an older age where you finish school, you now have a career, and you get to a stage where you're like, oh, my life is comfortable now.
Too comfortable.
Like, you know, and then you start thinking about, like, you know, the whole, like, do I really want to, like she was saying, what the, so I think the older you get, the easier it becomes for you to put off marriage.
So
Yeah, I don't know
the more education you get, your standards change.
Right.
Because you meet a whole different group of people, and you're like, oh, does this person meet my standards?
Right.
Maybe they
Your
do. Maybe.
views change.
Exactly.
You know, like.
So
what you
it's a
wanted.
whole different ballgame. Even if
Yeah.
I was in a relationship in high school, I was like after, and I was like, nah, let me wait.
Yeah.
And then when I got to college, I'm like, we can't have the same conversation
Right,
because I would try to have a conversation,
Mhm.
and you're like, no, I gotta go to work. I gotta go do my security job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, think
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah.
You know, so
Right.
your perspective changes. Everything changes because now you're experiencing all these new ideas. You're growing, and then you graduate, and then you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Do we have the same thing in common? Can I
Yeah.
do this?
Yeah.
So, like, probably that's what happened with your
Yeah.
relationships
For me,
too.
like right when I graduated from high school, the most important thing to me was not salah. For me, when I was looking at a man, that was not the first thing. For me, it was, can he make me giggle? Can he make me laugh? Can he travel the world with me and things like that, you know? And then over the years, when I started to become 25, I was like, whoa. I even though I'm not the most religious person, I think I want someone that to be the number one, is someone who prays, you know? And then what really changed for me was when I was in college, even before that, college, like an educated man was the number one choice.
Yep.
After allowing me to travel and him to travel with me. But I don't know, maybe it's because the guys I talked to were very cocky when they were educated, or they were just looking down, either down on the culture or down on the deen or the importance of family value, you know. And that was why I was like, whoa, why is this happening to me? But alhamdulillah, like you said, our perspectives always change, whether you're in school or not, whether you're working or not. But yeah, I think that's very interesting.
Do you think it was harder to get married the more educated you are because you're a woman? Like, cause like if you're a woman and you're looking for a man and he's educated, that's not something you have an issue with, you know? So do you think men had an issue with you guys being like more educated?
When I was dating Somali guys, it was the number one issue. And part of it honestly was because of them. It wasn't just because of me. It was their lack of not getting an education. And all those things. And this was not just guys who his family or, you know, their family were back in Africa. They were here. They had the same exact opportunities as I did. They just choose to not take advantage of it. But when I've dated I'm very happy about this. I've really dated outside of my culture. I've dated Pakistani brother, I've dated Caucasian man, I've dated African American, and I've also dated like a couple of West Africans. And they actually wanted highly educated women. They wanted PhD holders, doctors, and things like that. But the Somali was the complete opposite. I don't know why that is for our brothers in our
It's the
culture.
community. It's the way we've been raised. You know, our community doesn't put a lot of value in education when it comes to their girls. they put a lot of value in what they do with the boys, etc. But when it comes to the girls, the view is basically like, oh, you're getting your education just until you get married, and then after that, it's like,
You're not
that's
gonna use
that,
it.
you're done. So when women do get their education and they do go farther, it becomes intimidating because now they feel like, oh, you're not gonna do your role as a wife because you've been westernized or too educated. So you're gonna, not fall into this expectation that the community places on us. And I've heard this before. People are like, oh, they do not put value in the education, and that's so frustrating because we work just as hard or even harder, to get where we are and, to go through school and to become something, and nobody cares about that.
Yeah,
So then, yes, it is harder to get married in our community.
My experience is a little different from yours. So the Somali brothers that I met that were interested were actually really investing more. Like, oh, this is so nice. Like, I want to help you.
Right.
And the non-Somalis that I dated, they kind of try to put me in a box. So to me, that's what when you said it, I was like, who are you meeting? Where are you meeting these people? For me, it was the complete opposite. I felt like they were trying to make me feel lesser than them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like they would try to challenge me more. They're like, oh, you have a master's degree. Let's see what you can do, But the Somali brother like, Allah, to me,
Yeah.
Like, you're kind of a soldier, bro. Like, I can mess with you, So it was a little bit different. They were more like, oh, I want my kids to have what you have.
I like that.
But I feel maybe because it's a different breed of Somalis that I met and because I went to Somalia, and they're like, maybe it was an opportunity moment, but I felt like
I think in Somalia they value education.
I think
Even
that's what
if
it
with a
was.
civil war, they still go to school.
Exactly.
I don't know, I think the brothers here, a certain generation, I'm not talking about the flight, was it Flight 13, the first generation? The first generation was like substance. But I think there was another wave of generation that went by where they didn't go to school, and they got intimidated with sisters that do go to school,
But there
So
is
maybe
intimidation. There is
Yeah.
intimidation, I'm
Yeah.
not going to lie,
Right.
because at a moment they will try to challenge you.
Yeah.
Let's see what your master's degree can do,
Do,
So,
exactly.
and it's every man because I'm going to say that in general.
Mhm.
I'm not speaking for all men, but the
Right.
ones that I interacted with, I feel like it's a way for them to feel more powerful, to feel more valid, to
Right.
feel more important. But I'm like, it's not a competition.
Right.
You can actually buy this degree, I can buy it too,
Yeah.
but that's not the point. You understand? I just worked harder for it, and you can do the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, when did the anxiety of not being married go away and you just became like okay with it?
If I can go
Yeah,
first.
please go first.
So it never goes away.
Nope.
Never. Because every time you meet another person, you're like, maybe this is it,
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, you kind of give. Now you're like, okay, now I'm grown. Now I think better. Let's see if this is the person that's my match. If anything, you feel like time is ticking. Like it's like a weird clock, but it's not there, but you feel it.
Yeah.
So, and then, but the thing about it is, nobody's telling you what to do. You're pushing it. You're stressing yourself out all by yourself. You don't need anybody else because it's literally you feel the time. For me, my birthdays were the saddest days. I'm like, oh God, another year I'm not married. What did I do wrong? Ya Allah, And then I would have a whole session like all Ramadan. I'm like, I will have my 15 days of just making dua about it. And I'm like, why can't I just make dua about money? I feel like
Focus
I've
on
done it
something
like
else.
3 Ramadans in
Yeah.
a row. Like focus on something else, but it never goes away.
For me, it's sad, but birthdays make me extremely happy. It annoys the living life out of my mother. Bless you. Sorry, Mom, I'm throwing you under the bus. But wallahi al-azim, it stressed everyone else out so much that it used to be like, I used to just look at them like, what is your problem? Like, for me, I am out literally texting my nieces, texting them, be like, listen, I'm gonna be, like, my birthday is in 6 weeks.
We should
Let's
do
do Hawaii.
friends.
Seriously, and my mom would be like, "Hiya birthday, giya sosad." Like she would just literally,
I feel like your mom.
my God, she said October, ala inasisa. And the thing is, my birthday is a month before her birthday. So whenever I tell her, "Oh, Mom, what do you want to do for your birthday?" Naya, hey, I don't want my birthday. Just get married. Like it really stressed her out. And I think the last 5 years for me was the hardest on her and my brothers because she just genuinely wants to retire and be done and go back home to, you know, Cardo. She has a house there. She just wants to hang and chill. But for her, she always felt guilty, like that I'm not married and I'm a daughter, and I don't. She doesn't want me to be alone. And I understand her frustration, but for me, it was the complete opposite. It bothered everyone, but when it bothered people is when it stressed me out. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh. There was a time, wallah, I remember it was like 2 Ramadans ago. I was like, Ya Rab, just give them a husband. Literally, it was like, give them a husband so they could just leave me alone so I can live my life, you know. But alhamdulillah.
I think it stresses other people out more than it stresses out. For me, I don't think, I think the older I'm getting, the more I'm not giving up on it, the more I'm okay with it, because honestly, and this is a constant reminder we have to keep telling ourselves, you know, we have our plan and Allah has His plan, right? And everything will happen within His plan. Of course, we also have to put in the work and the effort. Some of us put in more effort than others. And I think for me, I have to constantly remind myself, like, because it's not my time, it's not my time. But also, like, you know, I have to, how do I say this? I have to, like, look at everything else that's happening in my life. Like I said earlier, I'm so comfortable. I'm thinking less about it because I'm just, you know, too comfortable. But I don't think I haven't given up on it. I think less about it. If that makes sense. I just don't think about it as much.
Yes.
You become relaxed about it. You understand the qadr of Allah. You understand that there is a reason and a hikmah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has lifted the pen and the ink has dried. You know, it's not that you are accepting, like, your family not being joyous or you not wanting it. It's just that you become at peace with something. It's like,
and when you become at peace with something, it's like you're not going to settle, you're not going to, like, you know, fall into pressure. There's a lot of things you're going to be able to do without feeling like, because at the end of the day, you have to satisfy Allah and yourself, right? These people are going to go away after they've been pressuring you for years.
When the wedding is
after
over,
the wedding is like they're gone, and you're the one who has to deal with it. So I think you have to think out beyond that. And when you think beyond that, then you start to realize, okay.
But it still never goes away.
And that doesn't go away.
Never
It just
not fully.
Yeah, it doesn't
but
go
then
away fully.
you have focus on different things. Now you're like, oh, I need a project.
Right.
Like I need to do this before I'm 35. I need to do this before I'm 36.
And you can do it.
Right.
Because there's no one holding you back, right? So.
Did your reason for getting married change though? Like when you in your like early in your 20s
that changes every
and then
year, by the way.
in your 30s.
It changes every year. Like she already mentioned, like her priorities. I had a list. Okay.
I know that list. We all had a list though.
Or something. I had a list. I sent it to my people. I've seen my list, and thinking about it, it was ridiculous.
Why?
Like it was just like the things on it. First, I was like, I don't want anybody who's not Somali. I don't even want to consider. Don't approach me without someone without, like, you know. I don't have that mentality anymore. But at that time, my heart was set on it. You know, I was like, that was it. And then, of course, a lot of superficial stuff on it, education and all that stuff. And now, if you tell me to write down, my list would, of course, there are some things that are values that are not going to change. You have to have someone who's, you know, of course, Muslim, but also practicing, not just Muslim by name, like things like that, but also practicing, because when it comes to the deen, you have to, like, that has to be your number one. That wasn't my number one, like she said earlier. That was not my number one in my early 20s, right? But now it's a deal breaker. Like, if you're not praying, then don't even
Call me.
Don't text me.
So, and I'm not talking about I'll pray when I get home kind of thing. Like, you know, that has to be established. You have to be at the same level as I am, especially when it comes to the deen, or better, you know, because you can't have someone bringing you down there. You can't afford that. And other important things, because now you're starting to think about your kids, the type of father you want to have. It's no longer about you as much. It is about you, of course, at first, but it's not so much about you. You have to you start thinking about when you age and all that stuff. I don't believe in changing people. Before I did.
Yeah.
In my 20s, I believed in like, oh, I can change him or blah, blah, blah. Now I don't believe in doing that.
Yeah.
Like, I believe like you take someone the way they are, you accept them, and when you accept them the way they are now, you better accept them, later on, because you can't be like, well, I thought he would change. No.
Yeah.
My biggest thing when I was young is somebody who can make me laugh.
Yeah.
Like, you get my jokes and I get yours.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I didn't marry a person who makes me laugh anymore.
You end up with someone complete opposite, but you know
Yeah.
what?
Good
You're
for you,
happy.
yeah.
Yeah, and
It brings
good.
something else to the
Exactly.
table.
And then when I was
Problems
younger,
needed.
it was like, you have to be financially stable so you can help me.
Yeah.
And then after I graduated college, I'm like, I can get a job. I don't
Yeah.
need you,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So your priorities with age honestly changes. So sometimes I feel bad and I'm not gonna, like the girls who get young early, I'm like, do you know what's wrong with this person? You know, so because they have different priorities than I do, you know? Their whole idea of who that person is to them is completely different than what I would think. You know, and I have nieces who got married really young, and I would look at her like, "What's wrong with you?" And they look at me like, "What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You're getting old.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're doing stupid stuff."
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, but it's a weird dynamic, and it's always beneficial to look to another person's life, and you're like, you really picked this person for
Right.
this reason,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So
Alhamdulillah.
with age, everything changes.
Absolutely.
Your priorities, everything changes with time.
What kept you guys from settling?
I think meeting the right people.
The people in our community,
Some people do settle though. It's like
They do.
whoever shows up first.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think you ever settle. There's maybe a little bit
some
that you
people do
might
settle.
like
though.
the same thing with
some people
career.
you look at them and you're like, you could have done better.
But that's your opinion, though.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah.
They're like, I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
This is who I
That might be
chose.
true.
Yeah. So
But
when you
everybody-
look
yeah.
outside in,
Yeah.
it's completely different. So
Absolutely.
you're just being like, oh, you
Right.
know you deserve
Yeah.
way more.
Yeah.
But they're like, yeah, I'm good.
Deep down, as much as you want to settle or don't want to settle, ultimately you have to become content with what Allah puts it in front of you. Whether it's you're going to be single or whether you found a spouse, whether, subhanAllah, when it comes to children, career, we apply for certain schools, you don't get in. You apply for certain degrees, you don't get in. But you ultimately become content with it. Why are we, when it comes to marriage or starting a family, why are we not content with what our perspective and our what we think will happen? It's like, why do we put ourselves in a box? Allah has already written what He wrote for you,
Yeah.
Just praying istikhara, for me, that was what made me happy. There were certain relationships where if I look back, I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with them. They were going to be the love of my life. We were going to have children. I even thought as far as even having my grandkids run around me, And wallahi, when it didn't work out, it devastated me. It devastated even my mom because she knew how happy I was with that person. And now when I look back, when a couple of years passed by, you're like, Allah, I asked you, you answered, now I'm content with it, The 2 rak'ah of istikhara changes, not just about marriage, but wallahi, even choosing a career. Just going to Allah, Salatul Layl, you consult Him, you walk out, sometimes wallahi al-azim, I'll forget the person's name. And it has happened to me twice, where I don't even know that person's name anymore. Because I have fully put my trust in Allah, so.
But also, it's qadar Allah too.
Of course.
So you can be like, oh, she's settling, but no, this was intended for me. It's not
Exactly.
really settling.
Right.
Like maybe you went through all these people just to find this person,
But
So-
I think the question is like, why didn't you settle? What was the question?
Would you
yeah.
settle?
No, what stopped you from settling?
stopped
Like
you
Because
from
qadar Allah,
settling?
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Your person, the person that you're meant to be with, they're there. Whether it's 35, whether it's 40, whether it's 50, whether
Yeah.
they're 15 years younger than you, that person is meant for you, and that time will come.
And I
So
think-
that's one motivation for me
Right.
that kept me going.
And I think when you're in the moment, you don't really know you wouldn't know you're settling for this person until it passes.
Right.
And then you realize, oh, if I did marry this person, I would have been settling because I would have been giving up so much.
Right.
Where now I feel like, I'm able to make better choices or better decisions. So I don't.
Did your the person you're with, does he have to be educated?
Once upon a time, that was a huge deal breaker for me. And then I dated a lot of educated. I'm not saying wallahi, I'm not saying educated men are shallow or stupid, arrogant, and not practicing faith. but that's what I kept running into. I remember it really devastated me. There was a guy, his family was righteous, and I thought he was righteous. And I don't know, a conversation led to one, and then we were talking about the ring, and right after we talked about the ring, I don't know how the concept of religion came up, and he made the comment of saying, why should I be involved in the war between Allah and Iblis? Like, in a way, it was such, like, and I was like, what did you say? He was like, well, I don't understand why I should be punished. I was like, so wait, being on earth, worshiping Allah is a punishment to you? He said, well, because they ate the apple. And I was like, whoa, do I really want this man to be the father of my children? After that, I was like, I'm sorry, our aqidah is not the same, you know. But he had everything on that list except that. And he prayed, you know, subhanAllah. So I think education helps. It really helps when it comes to talking to the person. There are certain things that will frustrate you if they're not educated. But honestly, it's no longer the most important thing to me, you know. It still matters to me. I still want my kids to be educated. I still want us to not just be educated in dunya. I'm talking about educating ourselves when it comes to Islam and aqidah. Just knowing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His Quran and His Prophet say is very important to me. So
Yeah. To go back off what she said, I think like that resonates with me because like my parents, like they were like always pushing for someone who's like very educated, and I'm like, at the end of the day, education does not matter. Like as long as he can do his salah, like he can support me, and like in like a Islamic household, then that should be enough. Like why do I have to like get somebody who's like very educated, who like a doctor or something, but like he knows nothing about deen. So it's like later you're gonna see me her because he knows nothing of the deen, and he's gonna like mistreat me or all this other concept will come into play, and then it's like, do you want to blame me for it because like I let you guys choose who my spouse would be, but that's not what I was looking for. Like I never looked in education. I was never like, I want a guy who's like sophisticated. Like if you're smart, that's good, but like if you're like more prone to like the deen and you got that on lockdown, like you're the one. Like I really could care less if you know English, but if you know the deen and everything, then that's what helps me because you'll be able to lead me to the gates of heaven. Like that's all that matters. So it's like it really doesn't.
I think,
Go ahead.
I think what, like for our parents and that generation, and still people till today, education means stability and a good job. So it's not so much like the degree, because there are a lot of people who have a degree who don't have a job, right? But mentally we've been programmed to think like, oh, if a guy has his degree, then he's going to be able to provide for you and all this stuff. But that's not really the case so much, you know. You have people who don't have so much as like more than a high school degree, or that work really hard and they put, you know, that, you know, make sure that their family are taken care of financially and everything. And then you might have a guy with a master's, highly educated, who's very stingy.
Has
and,
you
know,
paid the bills?
And has you splitting the
off.
bills and all that stuff, you know, this 50-50 thing that comes from the educated man, right? Whereas if they're not so much educated, they could still meet their obligation. They'll even tell you, you know, you don't need to work, I'll take, like I've seen that, I have that, where they're like, you know, we don't have a college degree, but guess what? I'm jealous because now your wife doesn't have to work, and you know you're providing for them and all this stuff. Whereas if I'm to marry someone who's highly educated, and I'm not dissing, I'd be happy, but there are certain things that people have to understand. Like just because they're educated does not mean they'll be able to provide for you 100%, and that's why I feel like our parents' generation, that's what they look at.
So for me, I don't care if you get education. You can, as I said, anybody has access to this. You can go to University of Phoenix to do it, you know. So for me, is the drive. Like you get up and you do something with your life and you earn your halal money. I'm game. You know?
I have a question. Are you willing to hold him down while he gets his education?
Hold it.
Meaning like take care of the bills.
Being financially stable.
I would, honestly, because the 2 years or the 4 years that they're bettering themselves, they're bettering me too, you know, because why do I expect him to help me grow, him pay, all those things. I know Allah has ordained him to pay the bills, to take care of be the man of the household. But if you're doing this for us, because let's be honest, when you go to college, you earn more, 60% more than people who are not educated. Unless otherwise you went into a business. Business is the only thing that separates you from the poor and from earning money. I get that. But of course, I mean, it's an investment. I see it as an investment, putting money in a savings and investing it in him. And him doing the same for me. So I know someone.
What if he marries another woman while he's not joking?
Yeah.
Because the other topic, I was like, he bettered himself a room.
Educated.
The whole time you're like, let me check him.
Oh my God.
And then he's like, guess what? I have enough money for two wives.
Well, that did happen, not just with education. Remember, even owning, like people owning properties in Kenya. The wife will make this money. She did what is this called? Daycare with the husband for years. They saved the money. Go and make a business for us. While he's there making the business, he takes on a second wife. He did not betray me. He betrayed himself, and he betrayed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because I gave you that money. We did that together, and you invested it in someone else. So you're going to have to face your
I was trying to
But it has happened. That's why I'm glad you brought it up. It has happened.
Yeah,
To people that I know.
fear too. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll build you for what? So honestly, when you said I'm gonna, I'm gonna be here, if it was, I don't know, because he didn't
Right.
help me get to where I am.
Right.
I did that all by myself.
Right.
Alhamdulillah, my family had everything else.
Right.
So I'm like, is it my job?
Yeah.
Is it really?
It's not
You
your
know?
job, but
It's
not
I
your
can
job.
help
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
I can try.
Right.
But I don't want that to fall as a responsibility.
Especially
that
if you
I
have
to
kids,
take.
though. What if you have kids?
Yeah, I don't want it to be like one of those heavy things on me. Like Allah, you don't have that kusaran, So I'm like, sorry, like
Yeah.
this is kind of too much. Like,
Right.
I will hold you down. Don't get me wrong, but for me.
Finally, we found complete opposite of this table.
I know finally.
Complete opposite, yeah.
For me, I think
believe
it would
that.
depend. Like I was saying, if there's kids involved, we need to rethink about the whole situation.
Yeah.
But if there are no kids involved, then it would be different. So I think it'll depend on where you are at that
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely take on that, and I think that's what comes with the whole aging and working, and the longer you wait to get married, because I'm supporting myself now, I'm supporting my whole household,
Yeah.
so I know I'm capable of doing that, but I also don't have kids, I don't have to, so it depends on
Time
where
is
you
not,
are.
it's structured as
Right.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, not people thinking that, hey,
And
the
supporting
the
is
one
not
that is
paying
not asleep, or that doesn't want to support her man,
Yeah.
that's not it. It's just like
You're at that time in your life, yeah.
priorities, because I got to where I am the
Yeah.
way I did it.
Right.
If that's something that you want to do, figure it out.
Yeah.
Don't make it, as I say, don't make a
Yeah.
you problem a me
Right.
problem. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot, because just going through it yourself was hard. Now doing that with a family, with kids, and it would be 10 times harder.
So, is marriage too expensive?
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, because now it's you're worrying for two. It's not just by yourself.
Marriage or married life?
Wedding.
Just marriage life.
Just like getting married and being married.
Getting married, it is expensive. It's very expensive. And actually being married is expensive.
I thought getting married. I thought being married wouldn't be expensive. It's like two people.
Yeah. So when two people come together, it's 2 different lifestyles. So this person likes what they like, you like what you like. So to me, that's like bringing two different like tabi'at, two people, 2 different lifestyles, 2 people like who have 2 different ways of living together. But if you guys manage your money well, I guess yes. But I like what I like, so.
So
It can get expensive.
Do you have to have like your own money, his own money, and then you guys' money?
Islamically, yeah. His money, our money. My money, my
Your
money.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. So,
Yeah, I like
but it's actually it's one of the most sensitive things to talk about when you first get together with a person, especially when you're over 30, because this whole time you've been only thinking about yourself and your family, you know.
Yeah.
It was never about, oh, let me see what, you know. It's completely a different dynamics, a different energy. It's very sensitive. But, and they know that. They're like, oh, you know, she's more educated than me, you know. She has a better job, or whatever, you know, the
Yeah.
case may be. And then you're like, no, my money, your money.
But that would be really difficult. I
It
imagine.
is very difficult,
Like,
you know.
you're right. It's so that would be very hard to adjust as you get older. Like, no, like paying your bills, like, because when you spend your money, when you run out of it, no big deal, right? It's on you. But when you are with someone, when you're married, you gotta, if you're gonna spend a large amount of money, you gotta run it by someone else. And I can definitely see how that is like, and not just that, but also like how your usual spending, if they're not.
Not only that, somebody's dictating how you're spending
Yeah,
your
I
money,
would
you know, and
Imagine.
that would become a little bit uncomfortable.
So for me, I think getting married is extremely expensive, depending on where you come from. Meaning, for example, Americans, they usually have their own apartment already, they're established. They're bringing two furnitures together, two living situations together. For the Somali community and for the African community, for the Pakistani community, there is this thing where everything sort of has to start from scratch. So you're getting the apartment, the furniture, the utensils, all of it is either new or fairly, like, very new, almost new. So bringing that from scratch is very difficult, especially when you're considering it's based on one income, because I have always had one line and one sentence and one ego and one way of life, which is, I am not going to provide for you. You're the man, you're the maintainer, you provide. My income is not your income. This is one of the first few conversations I've ever had with men, and if they don't even pass that, we're not talking about marriage. My money is my money, and I'm not being selfish about it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, you are the maintainer, you're the provider. I grew up in a household where my father paid the bills. My mother had her own businesses, she has her own properties. She did not pay his bills, because she was like, I'm your wife, that's your responsibility. In America, that can be difficult in certain situations because we're first generation immigrants. So my ruling is this: we're gonna live within your budget, we're gonna live within your what's in your pocket. I'm not gonna have you make me live in Mercer Island, have you pay $3,000-$4,000 apartment. But let's now look at, you already are paying, you're a man, you live on your own, you have your own place or whatever, if the person is not living with their parents, right? So now how can we take that same budget and try to squeeze two people in, you know? And then whatever Allah gives me, you know, I'm not like stingy. Or even when I had my brothers live with me, of course they maintained, they took care of the bills, but I was the person who would go and buy the cute things like the carpet and the drapes and things like that that would be extra. I call it like icing on the cake, you know what I mean? But I was not the main provider until all of my brothers, alhamdulillah, got married. Now it's my mother and I, then now I pitch in at least 50% or at least 80%. So with my husband, I expect him to be 100% the main provider, and then whatever I have, if I want to, I will do it, but I hope he's not expecting it, and that's one of the first conversations I have with the person. And that's why I'm single until recently. But yeah, I think honestly it is, because I don't want to lie to them, because one of the first advices that I got for marriage, especially sisters that got married here, sisters that got married back home, they said there is a reason why Allah made the man the provider, because there's going to come a time where the woman, when she's helping or is the provider, she's going to resent him. She's going to actually disrespect him. She's going to, it's not in every situation, but there's also going to be a mistrust. I have sisters who for years were paying the house, the main bill, and now all of their house and everything that's main property is under her name. Because the very person she's having children with, she doesn't even trust him, because he's supposed to be the main provider and he's not. So for me, I was very straightforward about that. I think like transparency is very important. And I always have that conversation. It's the most difficult conversation, like you said. Finances is very difficult, but I have always been black and white about it.
And I agree, the woman should never set the tone where she feels like, oh, well, you know, I'm working, I can provide, also, you know, contribute 50-50, that's great, you're going to have kids later, then what?
Yeah.
You know, so then you have to think about those things. So no matter how independent you are or how much you can take care of yourself right now, marriage is a whole different story.
Yeah.
And that's one topic that really needs to, like, people need to,
Oh my God, yeah.
like, be transparent and, like, talk about.
It's very expensive though, so if you
Very.
depend on a person, and
Yeah.
again, we talked about, do you want them to have education? No, they don't.
Right.
So it's gonna take a toll on the other person,
Yeah.
and you need to be fair.
That's what I
Yeah,
mean,
you
like
know?
having a budget, like have a spreadsheet. What is the rent? What is the electricity? What is everything when you write down? What is then left?
Yeah.
Even as a wife, if I see what is left after all of that is paid is like 400, of course, I don't mind taking 2-3 grand from whatever money I'm making and then contributing. But the thing is,
Okay.
like, if that person is not the main provider,
Mm.
I know myself, I will not be, excuse me, I don't know if this is PG-13, sexually attracted to the person. And I know that sounds very strict, but it's just what I have seen certain marriages fail because of that.
Yeah.
Because the women now are, the person they're sleeping right next to, she's putting like 50% or sometimes even 80 to 70%. Mother is different, right? And then the man she's married to is paying, let's say, maybe the rent and nothing else. And then let's say men make more money than women. Average, if you look at the US, men always make more money than women, unless otherwise they're educated. And even in some cases, it's complete opposite because you add investments and things like that. But
But that's the
Yeah.
probably that's the conversation they
Right.
had, and that's the
Yeah.
agreement they had,
Yeah.
and that's actually, as a person who just recently got married,
Yeah, yeah.
that's one of the biggest things that you have to have a conversation about.
absolutely,
And
yes.
you keep a stand to where
Yeah.
you're supposed
Yeah.
to be. And I remember majority of my friends gave me the advice, like,
Yeah.
don't pay the bills. And I'm like, I'm one of those people, like,
Yeah.
when the bill comes, I start getting, like, shaky. Because I'm
Shaky.
so used to
Sometimes.
it.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ah, should I? She
Right.
goes,
Maybe,
don't,
like,
don't touch it. This is from my married friends.
Right.
Don't
Yeah.
touch it.
I
It's
don't-
not
Yeah.
your problem.
Right.
I think I have to be manager of the
Yeah.
bills because managing and using your money is two different things. I
Right.
think you can, if you're good at that, you can still do it. You can, but the money needs to come from him. Like, I know how expensive it is to live right now, but I'm doing it, I'm supporting a family.
Right.
So if I'm doing it, then I think only two people with a one income, I think you can make it work. I think you just have to talk about it. I think what scares men, and this is just my opinion,
Right.
I think, is like they think that when they are whoever they're marrying or something is going to be really extravagant or like overly spending.
Sometimes
and so
it
I
is
think
that,
that
yeah.
that's scary, and sometimes it is,
Yeah.
and that's something they need to know ahead of time, right? But that scares them, and they think, oh, I can't afford this. But if you just think about, your rent, your utilities, your grocery, etc., I think any man can handle that. If he has a job, if he has a stable income, they can handle it. They're paying for themselves right now, they can pay for it when they get married. I think women just, I feel they volunteer too quickly. To be like for this whole 50-50 thing, they volunteer too quickly without even understanding the reality of it. And I myself, when I was younger and had living with everyone in my family, and I didn't have all this responsibility, I also thought, yeah, I will definitely do 50-50 because, things are expensive, but now I see the reality of how things are, and they can do it. We just have to, not to be too quick to be like, oh, don't worry, I'll cover this, and then they become too used to it. And
Because before you get married, it's easier for you to just read the rules.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you're financially responsible.
Yeah.
If I want to volunteer to help, that's going to be for me.
Right.
And if I feel like I'm using you too much,
Yeah. Yeah.
then maybe I'll contribute. We don't
Right.
know. We don't
Yeah.
know. But it's very, very, very important to have that conversation.
Absolutely.
And if he's not ready for it, then maybe you're not ready for it. Like, I'm not going to make it difficult for you,
Right.
but if you can't keep a roof over our head, then maybe
Yeah.
you're just not ready.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Can fear of getting married late or having a bad marriage be one of the reasons people have kids outside of wedlock?
ooh, I don't know how, okay, I read that question, and I don't know how, like, okay, the fear of getting married and marriage failing, that's one thing. I think we all have that fear, right? But I don't know how it's any better going off and having a child. Now you've just locked yourself down with no other person to help you out. So, one, I don't think it's an
correlates,
excuse,
yeah.
and two, of course, religiously we're not supposed to, but even outside of that, like you haven't done yourself a favor. Now you have a child. You're the only one who has to support this child. You just made your life even worse. I mean, more miserable, I think. Than if
But
you
I
had
think
just
that
stayed
people
single
that
and
have
feel-
children out of wedlock, they were not pressured the presence or the absence of marriage. I think they just genuinely wanted to go and have sex, period, you know? And then in that process of having sex, they ended up having a child, you know? Whether we have this excuse of there's a lot of contraceptions right now with birth control pill and all those things, ultimately, you did not stay within the Sharia law, which is no sex outside of marriage. If you are looking even the prospect of having sex, you should just definitely throw yourself in the next marriage. That is better for you to marry someone that you married for a year or two, get divorced with that intention to heal your sexual desires, than to have a child outside of marriage. Because wedlock is not just something that harms the particular person that's doing it, but it harms the society, it harms the family, it harms the especially I would say the parents. If that pressure of marriage and the lack of it is there, I think there's a lot more options for marriage than there is to commit zina. I know some people always tell me like, no, I think, how were you not peer pressured? You went through college. How were you able to stay away from sex? It's very simple. It's the doing it versus not doing it. For me, I've never ever thought about sex outside of marriage. It was never an option. For me, it was like, if that desire is even there, let's get married. Let's elope if we have to. If we have to force the family to come to terms that, you know, they don't want you for whatever the reason is, it's better for me to marry you than not marry you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So instead of using the word wedlock,
Yes.
what if, because you're getting older and you're not getting married, you decide to like maybe have a sperm donor?
Is that the, yeah, I think
No,
that's
no, I'm just adding to that,
Yeah.
just to see where you guys are at.
Sperm
Because
donor?
for me,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go have a child out of wedlock. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go
of
get a
course,
sperm
yeah.
donor.
Right, right.
And just do it the scientific way and then figure
Right.
out the rest.
Right,
Because
right.
that's not written. There's a rule, but then it's like I'm not having sex. Do you
Well, there is.
understand?
It is written actually. The Sharia law does.
They actually talked
It
about it
doesn't
later.
specify
Thank you.
exactly.
That's what I
yes,
was trying to
but
get at.
But
they-
marriage, paternal, the ayah, the Quran, and it talks about when it comes to children having paternal. So if the absence of
having a
paternal,
father.
having a father, and then he even goes further and discuss it as to why there is the importance of having a father, because of that lineage and that heritage and all those things.
I think the alternative is, I want to like mention a class that we took,
Yeah,
Protect This House and
yeah, I love that.
So we actually discussed the same issue, this very issue. We talked about, you know, maybe adopting and things like that. That's permissible. Like you can adopt, if you're a guy, adopt a guy, and if you're, you know, a woman, adopt a woman. And that's all because of the, you know, the religious rulings. Like, you know, we can't be, that's not going to be your mahram if it's a guy, so you can't have a child.
Right,
You're not
right.
breastfeeding, etc. But we talked about the sperm donation is that the question that came up was if two people were married and they decided to freeze, you know, she decided to freeze her eggs, right? And then they already did this process, right, of freezing their eggs and all that stuff, and they ended up divorced. Can you use that as a now divorced woman who's single to, you know, become pregnant and have a child? And there's no rule against that because you technically have a father for it, I think. So it's that. But
But he
as
said
a-
that if you're not married to that person anymore,
if you're
Well,
not
that's
you
going
said-
off
no,
topic.
that no
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I mean,
let's-
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
so this
The
is
wedlock
coming
part.
back
Yeah.
to where's that sperm donor coming from? I think is a bigger question.
The only
Then-
reason I brought that up
Yeah.
is for me with the time clicking. As I told you guys, there was a weird time machine in my head that kept
Right.
clicking away, and I was like, "What's my option? Do I need to deal with the person? So let me find the Islamic ruling about sperm donor. So it's not necessarily wedlock, you know." So I was like, maybe I
for
can-
me, I
So
would
maybe
say
that's something
getting
we
married
can-
to anybody at that point is better than
To me, that
I
hurt my
disagree.
feelings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see, I disagree
That hurt my
with that
feelings
one.
more.
Yeah.
I disagree.
Why?
Yeah, that hurt my
because-
feelings.
Because that's
more.
halal though.
Because another
Wedlock is
option,
not halal.
no, another
Yeah.
option for me is adoption. We have so many.
Yeah, you can
Muslim-
do that, but if
That's
you
what
want
she's
your
talking
own,
about
yeah.
child.
Yeah,
though,
yeah.
like,
I'm talking about my
yeah.
own, my
You
You wanna
DNA
have-
out
so
there.
if it's if you can do the whole sperm donation, and I don't know, like that's something you can ask. Now that it's
cannot
not
do it.
applicable, we can't say you can or not. But like I can speak for myself. Like this is something you actually do think about as you get older. Like if you don't get married but you really want to have a child, is it so much that like that I need to carry this child,
Yeah.
or could I like adopt a baby that's a newborn and raise them yourself so they do become that, because there's so many Muslim orphanage out there, orphans that so I have thought about that. I haven't thought about the process of egg freezing and all that stuff. But yeah, so it's a discussion, and I think women do.
Yeah, you think about stuff
You
like
have
that.
to
So,
think about
and as a Muslim, you're like, ooh, wedlock? No.
No,
I got time for
but-
all that.
No.
I think that's a generational difference though. Like with
Yeah.
our generation, I don't think a lot of people fear that, like
But-
having a kid, like without being married.
But those are the same generation that are not okay with polygamy. For me, I would rather be wallahi al-adim wife number 4 than have sex with a man that I'm not married
I
to.
think
You know?
it's the lack of knowledge. Okay, so there are non-Muslims is not a big deal having
Right.
marriage out
Right.
of wedlock. We're looking at this as a Muslim community, right?
Perspective,
So
yeah.
the Somali community, we're majority, pretty much all Muslims, so we have to abide by certain rules, and so it comes down to how is this person's practice and what is their understanding of having a child outside of marriage or anything like
Right.
like that, and that is what's going to stop you.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, then
You have no
you're
boundaries,
going to be easily influenced and you'll have no boundaries. People fall into mistakes. Let's not like
Right.
outrule so many people who genuinely make a mistake, right? And this happens and now they have to deal with it. But you have to realize it, because your sin is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't really matter what society. Ultimately, the end of the day, whatever you do that is in the disobedience of Allah, you're going to have to face that with Him sooner or later, right? So it doesn't really matter.
But the question
but
here says
the question is
the
it
fear
better
of getting
still?
married.
I think
late.
it comes down to
Or
that.
having
It
a bad
comes-
marriage.
Right, or having a
Yeah,
bad
it come-
marriage.
Yeah, I don't think.
You can't predict whether or not you're going to have a bad marriage. And you
Wow.
can't fear. And majority of the people that I have met that have had kids out of wedlock were not even around my age.
Yeah,
They
a lot of
did
them
it at a
actually
young
are
age.
not.
So the fear of bad marriage, the fear of this or that
So
was
that's
not what I can't speak for them, of course. Was not what I believe that led
It's not
them
even
to that.
there
Majority of
anymore.
them is sometimes as something as simple as somebody not being a Muslim. The person you're in love with is not a Muslim, you know.
A lot of
And
it,
that's another
unfortunately.
topic for another shot and shake. You know what I
But
mean?
my thing is this.
But as
it's like-
adults, as
Go ahead.
people over 30, not married, like I said earlier, I have to go back to my thing. It's me. Like having a child outside of marriage is not going to help make my life any better. So fear of marriage, now you got a fear of raising a child, and it's just not.
For me, it was fear of not having a kid on time. That was the most thing I used to be afraid of.
Let's elaborate on that.
Yeah.
Your next
Yes.
question.
For like people from my generation, I think we say like, say you're dating somebody, right? And then you don't want him to be your husband, but you want to have a kid. So you're like, oh, I'd rather have a kid with him than get married to him, because I don't have to deal with him. He's just gonna be my kid's dad.
But it's not actually
I think-
dealing with him to a whole new different
Because
Not,
for the
not
next
as
18
not
years,
as
how
a
you
wife
do.
though.
No, it's
No,
still
but they're
worse.
going to be the child.
To me,
They're going to
it's
be involved in
worse.
the child.
Yeah, that's way
his child.
worse.
Whether or not you want him to be involved, whether or not you want him to be involved with you,
You're gonna be
he is involved in your
and then you're
DNA
gonna have
for the
less
rest of your life.
This is definitely
Yeah.
over 35,
Yeah.
over 30 conversation.
Well, even in my 20s,
No, that's what
mind
people. I know
But
people
that's what
think
you
though.
Yeah.
You have to
They
also
say
remember-
like I could just have a stepdad for this kid, and then he could just like
stepdad for the kid.
Yeah, like stepdad can be
Your
like.
generation runs.
Yeah, Quran, sir.
Stepdad
Some
can be
water.
your dad, and I don't really have to deal with this one as a husband.
But
And I'm the complete
I know,
opposite.
you're
I'm
making
like,
him worse
whether
than
it's a husband or
Yeah.
not husband,
It's not that the
even
person
worse.
who you're not married to who's making decisions about your kid,
Yeah.
which
Child
is
support.
10 times worse. To
DNA
me, anyways.
sequence,
I'm not gonna
oh.
judge all of
heck
them,
no.
but to me
Yeah.
that's 10 times worse.
That's 10 times worse.
Million times
It is.
worse,
It's
you
like,
know?
it makes no sense. Like, if you want to marry and settle down, it just, for me, it doesn't make sense because now you're having two guys to deal with. Isn't one enough? Like, you know, you've got
exactly.
like two to deal with.
Yes.
So I understand that mentality is there.
I
but
don't.
no,
I don't understand.
No, I can't wrap my
no,
head
what I
around
mean
it.
is like that's what they're thinking. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
like this age.
I think
group
let me
is
tell you why
thinking
I can't wrap my head around this because I waited too long not to deal with men.
Thank you.
So now, you know,
Sign me up for the Farah in
What if
Somaliland.
he's a
Wife
deadbeat?
number 4.
Then don't get involved with them.
why
in the
you
first
want the
place.
child? You want that thing.
You want the child for yours. You're just thinking about yourself. Like, oh, I have a mini me.
Okay,
That would be better than having
for
to
the
do-
purpose of
Yeah.
argument,
Right, right.
would you have a deadbeat person or would you not even know? Because you
Yeah.
want a mini me,
Yeah.
but you know this person ain't nothing. But not that
Marrying him, is it halal?
What? That's not the option. These
Yeah.
people are talking about wedlock.
Wedlock, okay.
They're not thinking about that. They
I'm
just
always
want
halal
a
foundation.
child.
So that's what I'm talking
Foundation,
about. Would you
yeah.
rather have it with the regular person from a sperm box? I'd rather choose that. Like take my life, just like, you know, rather than just be like, I know you are nothing, bro. Like I know it for a fact. Why would I waste my mini
I think
with
people-
your DNA? Like I already know you're
I'm the
nothing.
opposite.
Because they know who their dad is compared to it being like a
Confusion.
mysterious
To me,
man.
as again,
Yeah.
this is me speaking of me. I'd rather not know. If I know you're nothing, it would kill me more to have a child with you.
Oh man.
Do people really think?
Hey, maybe
Yeah.
I was a Harvard graduate and now you know when you pick the box. Yeah.
No, I understand the whole I'm just gonna marry this person and settle even though they're a deadbeat just so I can have kids in a house.
Isn't that the same thing?
What?
But this
it's
person
not the
doesn't wanna
same
deal
thing.
with the person
The
at
deadbeat
all.
person who did it the halal way. That person, you can always say, Abaha waka seto, hebelo bata, ine hebelo bata. You have a lineage, a connection. You know what I mean?
still say
Wallahi.
that.
I think I'm
And people can
completely
change. No, but people do change. I change. I mean, there was a once upon a time, this is not the person you saw.
I know, but there's
my
like-
foundation has always been,
I like this.
yeah. But it's a really, yeah, I was looking forward to that question. I was like,
Bad for you.
oh, yeah.
But if we're talking,
Mix that DNA up with somebody who's even white, bro. Just do it. Right. Then somebody can give you
Yeah.
If only, but we're not there yet. We're talking about wedlocks.
God, this topic.
I was like, that was
Lord have mercy. When I read this question, I was hyperventilating. I was like, how do I answer this?
I wouldn't even think that. I don't know. But okay.
Or like some people who say, I just want to have a kid because I want someone to love me, but I don't want to deal with the
I want to
man.
have kids too. Like, I will go visit my nephews and nieces.
Thank you. Get that out of your system.
Let me take one of them and let me just.
Yeah, if you stay with them for 4
I have
hours,
some
you
of
don't
my
You
take
get
that.
sick of it.
DNA, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think that's a good, healthy way to think about it because you're not thinking about the future. You're thinking about the moment.
You're not even thinking about
Yeah.
that child.
You're not
Wallahi.
thinking about that
It's very
child.
I'm
selfish.
You're not
telling you,
thinking about,
the greatest
yeah,
gift you
it's
can
like-
give your child more than anything else, Allah is saying, is a good spouse for you, for
It's
good
not
parent
just
for
that,
you.
but a good
Something
like,
that-
yeah, environment. You know,
Right.
but you're already having this child being in this environment. You already know what they're gonna grow up in. Versus marrying someone and they turned out to be a deadbeat and you divorced. At least you didn't get into
Right.
You at least you started out well, right? And you didn't want to bring your child into a dysfunctional situation. But
Right.
if you're already in a dysfunctional situation and you want to bring a child into it, that's so selfish. That's very selfish.
Right.
And you're not thinking about your child.
No, you're
and
not.
as you get older,
There is no mini-me.
you can't be thinking about just
Screw
yourself,
you, me looking
know?
like you. I would resent my mom if my mom did not think about the person she chooses for me to be their parent. Because for me, yeah, and it does happen. I know with this generation, the greatest gift my mom ever gave me was to choose a good man. You know, I mean, how he turns out to be. My mom always says it's like sticking your hand in a dark hole. You don't know what's coming out. But if your intention and your foundation is starting with good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you. I'm talking to you. I don't know why. Because you said generation. I'm like, oh my God, this generation is hyperventilating me. Oh, yeah,
I'm still stuck at, what's the word? Wedlock. I'm still at wedlock.
threw me off.
But I'm okay with accidents, you know. You
Yeah.
did something stupid when you were mad and then accident. But then you're just choosing this person for that purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Laugh or something. They're all bouncing.
Keyword, purpose. Ya salam. Next question, please.
Okay,
This is
what,
why the longer you wait, the more you change and you realize, you know,
Yeah.
what you were thinking.
Yeah.
And now
Now we're encouraging
Slap
people.
the
Tell your
young.
generation.
your weight.
Tell your
Your
generation.
okay.